you don't have to be perfect. It's acknowledging your goals. It's acknowledging that, you do have an end goal in mind for yourself.
And today I have Sophia Brown, who is an author and a mother of 5. Tell me more about yourself, Sophia.
Okay, and thanks so much for having me here today, Tiffani. So again, my name is Sophia Brown. I do go by author SM Brown on my book. So I'm a mother of 5. I like to call myself a mommy entrepreneur as well, because I'm always, looking for new ideas and new ways to produce income for myself, for me and my family. I am the author of the book Mindset Makeover Essentials. And my mission with mothers is to encourage them to work on their innermost thoughts, to help manifest what they desire in life. And so you have 5 children, right, Sophia? That is one thing we have in common, because I have 6, and that's just not very common nowadays, is it? No,
How old are your children?
So my oldest, I have 2 daughters who are 21. 2 are my stepchildren. And actually, that's how I came to meet my husband, was through our 2 oldest daughters when they were about 6 years old. And then my stepson, he is, turning 20 in April already. Can't believe that. And the next are between me and my husband. We have 2. One is turning 13 in a couple weeks. The other one will be 10.
Yeah, and I know there are so many challenges that we face as mothers of larger families, but it puts us in a unique position to learn. And then as we transition out of that stage, and you're entering the teen years now with your youngest, and my youngest is 16, my oldest is 28. So we learn a lot, don't we? And we can take what we learned and share it with other mothers. For me, that's in the context of doing the therapy that I do. And for you, you decided to write a book. What made you decide to write a book for moms?
Yeah, so it's actually been a long journey. I was the youngest also of 6 girls in my family. So, I was right now, as we're growing up and we're all mothers, I'm witness firsthand to the similar everyday struggles that we face as mothers, because I have all my sisters, we're all like best friends. And so, we rely on each other a lot. And a lot of things that I was starting to notice that bothered me is just from a negative standpoint, whether it was our career, can we get out of this rat race of the 9 to 5, hormonal changes, just the everyday situations with your relationships, maybe with a spouse or partner. And so one of my sisters, she had years ago, so I was at a really low point in my life, and she recommended the personal growth book. It's called The Master Key System by Charles Haanel. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. And it pretty much was the first time that I realized that we all are born with power within us to create the life that we desire. I'd never heard of that. I always thought like someone else created my life for me. And from that, and also just a really good point is it's rumored that Bill Gates actually read that book, and that's what pushed him to leave Harvard and start Microsoft.
Well, that's interesting. I actually have not read that book, and I think I'm gonna look into that, because anything to transform my mindset. So your book is really about mindset transformation. And that helps. When you transform a mindset, it helps us to be an effective mother, because you talked earlier about feeling like you didn't have the power to create your own life. And then coming to the realization that, wow, I can actually create my life the way I want it. And obviously, there's caveats to that.
Absolutely.
And there's work involved, but mindset is so important. So tell me why you decided to write a book on mindset. Why is mindset really a key for mothers in having that happy, peaceful home life? Isn't that what we really want?
Absolutely. And again, the inspiration was from myself and what I saw around me. Like I was beginning to notice that there was a lot of things that I wasn't healing within myself, and that anger was coming out towards my children, people that were important in my life. Also, I noticed it was hindering me from progressing in my life as well. And so because of that, and from my readings and everything, I started seeing my life transform right before my eyes. I mean, it was very magical. I met my husband. We started businesses together. Like I was doing things I'd never done before. And from that, and just me realizing that it just was me exercising my mind. We all like to exercise our outer bodies, make sure we do the yoga every day or go out and run those 5 miles. That's important, but that same also needs to be applied to our mindset and getting out a lot of the negative garbage out of our head.
And that's interesting because one of the things I teach is that it's so important for us to move out of a victim mindset. And so many mothers feel like victims of their past, their childhood. They find that they're being triggered, like you mentioned, by stuff in the past, trauma that's not healed. And they find themselves reacting to their kids in a disproportionately stronger than they would if they weren't being triggered. And they're like, why did I just act that way? And then when you look back on it, you can see that was a really strong reaction. That's a sure sign of being triggered. So it's good that you notice that this anger is coming from stuff that's unhealed in my past, and you made that mindset shift. And I think it's so important that we move from feeling like our life is controlled by everything else and we're victims of all the circumstances around us to realizing that when we transform our mindset, so much of our life transforms.
Absolutely.
So as a transformation coach, I have learned, and even in my own personal life, the importance of beliefs. Beliefs are absolutely crucial to what kind of mindset you're going to have. For example, if you believe you're destined to be a bad mother because your mom was a bad mother, or you believe you're just not good at parenting, or you believe you're not a smart person, or you believe you're ugly even, all of these negative beliefs can really weigh us down. And they could create a mindset that becomes self-fulfilling. And if you really believe I'm really not smart enough, good enough, patient enough to be a good mom, that's going to translate in your life, and it is going to affect your mothering. So
absolutely.
And I found there are some key positive beliefs that people need to have in order to feel truly empowered. And I know you talked about that in your book. And what do you think are the key beliefs that a mom needs to have? But just give me one key belief that you think is really vital and important.
Yeah, what I think is key is that you can pretty much anything that you want to be, have, do in this life, you can have that, and it just starts again from within and believing in yourself. But, it's hard because women as mothers, every day we wake up, you might be like, today's the day, and then your kid does something, or, I want to start that new goal for myself, and then something else changes. But you don't have to be perfect. It's acknowledging your goals. It's acknowledging that, you do have an end goal in mind for yourself. And as long as you have to align yourself with that type of vibration in life, and once you do, literally the world will start to unfold. But it's when you stay in that negative mindset where you're like blocking your blessings pretty much. So, it's just there's not a solution to everything, of course. Actually, I don't want to say that. There is a solution to everything. You just have to take the time to focus on it, get your mind right, take small little steps every day. I mean, everything that I've done in my life that I've wanted to do didn't happen overnight. And sometimes I woke up and I was like, I'm not doing this today. I don't have time to do this today, but I always go back to it once I get my mind right, and then I can focus again. So,
and don't you think that's important is sometimes we just need to take a break from our mothering and get our mind right.
Yes.
Just flustered because, you mentioned earlier solution to every problem. And I do believe there's a solution to every problem. But a key belief that we need to have is that I'm smart enough to find that solution.
That's right.
Here's the thing. So, sometimes the solution is external. I need to change something in my external world. And sometimes that solution is only going to be found internally, at least for now. I have an external circumstance I really can't change. So sometimes we cannot change something, at least for now, that is outside of us, something external. But we can make an internal shift. And often when we make that internal shift, the external will change. And I'll just give you an example. My 18-year-old son has osteogenesis imperfecta. It's a genetic condition. Last time I checked, there was really no way to change that. So he has to live with that condition, and it's not always easy. He broke his bone a year ago. It took him 6 months to get fully back on track because he broke his leg so bad. So that's something he has to live with the rest of his life. But if he walks around feeling like a victim, he's going to have an entirely different life than if he feels empowered and he believes that he can make these internal shifts that help him accept that, help him to move on in the midst of that, and help him use it as a stepping stone into becoming smarter, better, wiser. And I think that's the biggest challenge when we look back at our lives. We see the struggles we've had that have affected us. And then we have the struggles in our day-to-day parenting and mothering, and they seem so overwhelming. But we forget, like you just said, we don't have to be perfect. We can be perfectly imperfect. Exactly. And I think kids actually learn by watching us make mistakes.
Yes, absolutely. And just to go off of like what you're saying too, like I'll be real, like this past week we had my youngest daughter, we discovered, we don't like to call it a learning disability by any means. We call it her superpower. But we see that she could have like a little dyslexia. And from that, like her grades are going down. And so her self-confidence is really dwindling. And my husband and I were like, no, because the teacher actually emailed us at like 11 o'clock at night, like she got an F on her test. And mind you, this is us having tutoring. And I looked at that. I could have went one way with it, right? I could have really got upset. I could have lost it. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to take this. We're going to help her. When she wakes up tomorrow, we're going to let her know that even though she got this F, she has support. This F doesn't define her. We're doing everything we can to make sure that she gets through this hump. And so, I mean, it was a beautiful thing just seeing my daughter, like not crying, not getting upset over this F, that I know that in her normal state, if I would have took it there and got upset with her, she would have followed me to that state. And because we were just being so positive about it and what her future is going to look like, no, you're going to be just fine. It's like, yeah, you're right, Mom. It's just a little hiccup. I'm going to do better next time, So just to say that we're not perfect, like you said, but
that's important, though, to deal with it in that way, because so often we don't. We get angry and upset because we think it's a reflection of our own parenting. But in reality, I mean, you went at it with a positive approach. Okay, this is a hiccup. Now, how do we what strategy can we employ so that we can improve this situation instead of being angry? If you think about it yourself, when have you ever created change in your life because someone was screaming at you and telling you to loser? Right. It just doesn't happen, you know? And that's how we need to approach our kids is, you know, approach them as if they're human beings with a struggle. Even when that struggle even when that result may have came out because of some laziness on their part, it's like, well, how did that laziness pay off for you? What can you do different? Because this is not going to work for us in our household. So there's going to be consequences. So it's okay to bring those consequences. But I think I really like Love and Logic. It's a parenting book that I was introduced to years ago. And it's not a perfect book by any means. There's some iffy things I don't agree with. But the one thing I really liked about it was that they said you need to always approach your kids from that standpoint of compassion and empathy instead of anger. Anger really gets you nowhere as a parent. But coming and saying, all right, this is unfortunate. We wish it hadn't happened, but I feel bad. But what can we do differently next time? That actually is going to foster growth and consideration in your child. But when someone comes at you or I with that kind of anger, we're not real motivated to change. And kids are little human beings, and you know they're not either. So one of the things you talked about in your book that I really appreciated was the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Tell me what the difference between those two things are.
Yeah, so it's exactly what it says. So when you have a fixed mindset, like your thoughts are rigid, it's having fear of the unknown. You know, you're avoiding your thoughts basically. And, you know, we all go there where we're like, oh, you know, the outcome might be undesirable if I change something. Like you might be afraid to try out a new job, leave your job, move to a new state. So just anything where, you know, you're comfortable in your mind to make any type of change that could actually put your life on a whole new positive trajectory.
Fixed mindset, just so I'm clear, is a fixed mindset when we are staying in this point because we are comfortable with being comfortable.
Exactly.
We're afraid to just venture out into the unknown, into the unfamiliar.
Exactly. And then that's where like the growth mindset comes in, where you are open to expansion, learning more, not necessarily focusing on the how. You're just doing it because that is the way that you want to go. You're taking forward movement in your life to bring in the right people, places, things, and ideas into your life.
I think that's kind of a challenge with many moms because they're so overwhelmed with the day-to-day care of children, especially if they are working outside the home. And I think, I mean, when my kids were little, I think it was about 40-50% of women worked outside the home. When my daughter is 28, you know, if they decide to have kids, it's going to be way higher than that because the economics of the family situations have changed, and now more women are required to work outside the home. So more people enter into that parental role, and they're both working full-time jobs, and it can be very overwhelming. And then they get afraid to step out of that comfort zone and start a business or make a move or train for a new career. And I think that's really important to teach our kids to model that growth mindset. And not teach our kids to stay in a level of comfort zone and always be afraid to move forward. And I always have told parents, one of the most important gifts that you can give your child is the gift of confidence.
Yes.
Because the world is going to whittle that away. So
absolutely.
When we're at home, we need to build that confidence into our kids. And so our mindset is an example to our kids. So healing that mindset is profoundly important.
Absolutely.
It's probably the most important thing we can do is manage our own mindset.
Yes, absolutely. And like you said, with, you know, teaching our kids confidence, I totally understand that because my 13-year-old, she's very introverted. And especially after when the pandemic hit, we're like, oh man, because she was almost at the point of breaking through that. And so I'm slowly seeing her come out of her shell. And, there was a time where like this summer we were at the pool and she saw some kids from school and I challenged her because they were waving at her. And she just, and I'm like, go over there and speak to them. And she's like, but mom, what do I say? I'm like, just say 1 to 2 sentences. I'm like, let me challenge you a little bit. She's like, oh my gosh. So she goes over there. And on the heels of that, now, like she came to me a couple weeks ago and she's like, Mom, remember what you said this summer about saying 1 or 2 things? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, that's what I've been doing this whole school year. And thank you so much. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like just little things like that, that's that growth mindset. And for us as moms, same thing, like challenge yourself, like to say yes a little bit more to things instead of saying no,
Yeah, and that's, if you model that to your kids, I think they're more apt to do that, to have that growth mindset. Because if we don't, we have a fixed mindset, we pretty much remain stuck. And I think that's really the difference between our kids moving forward and really living out the life they dream of. Because how many kids say to themselves, you know what I'd really like to be? And then they have this lofty goal,
Yeah.
And then they don't ever become that. They don't even try because they already have that mindset of, I'm not good enough to do that.
Correct.
And even if we're instilling this positive mindset at home, sometimes it becomes a greater challenge because they're going to school and the people at school, their peers can be brutal, can't they?
Brutal.
And they're giving them the opposite message. We're telling our kid, you're good enough. You can do anything you set your mind to. And the kids are making fun of them and telling them they're stupid. And we have to be such a strong force of love and support and comfort to our kids that they have to, and we think it's bad because they have these challenges at school. And sometimes it can be overwhelming. So I never criticize a parent that decided to pull their child out and homeschool or move their kid from one school. As a parent, when your kid is psychologically overwhelmed, when they had enough, when they need a break. But sometimes these little relational challenges they get within the school system are actually beneficial because they're going to have those relational challenges when they get out in the real world.
Right.
They're going to have to deal with that. And we all have stories of when our kids had to deal with it. And it causes an immense amount of emotional pain. And as parents, really affects us. We feel bad for our kids.
We do.
That you're strong enough to handle these challenging situations. You're smart enough to navigate it is such an important mindset that we want to put into our kids.
Absolutely.
Okay. So how can moms develop a growth mindset in their own lives, irrespective of their kids? Because we see ourselves as, I'm a mom, and sometimes that we take on that as our only label, but we do have other interests, and we may want to start a business, we may have a career, we may have goals and hobbies, dreams, plans. What are the benefits of a mom really working on that for herself?
Yeah, so it's endless possibilities. I mean, when you decide to go that route, you're now living what you're here for, which is to live a life of intention, be very purposeful with your life. Basically, when you are in that mindset and developing this growth mindset, I mean, you will literally start seeing your life, transform right before your eyes. It's a beautiful thing. You just have to find the time to be intentional. I mean, sometimes it's when I'm driving down the street, I'll go through the metro parks, for example, because it's a beautiful scene. I put myself in calming environments. I've even gone out and walked in the woods after I've taken the girls to school. I find little pockets. Because as a mother, you have to find pockets of time because, I mean, everybody knows like mothers are just busy. We're doing so many things. You're not even just taking care of your children if you're with if you have a husband or something like that, like I have to take the whole house into consideration, so you have to find these pockets of time to work on your mindset, to work on your goals, and, just get it while you can at the best time that you can. It's not going to look like everybody else's time. You have to find the time for you.
It's interesting because I remember I went to hear a talk once, and it was a mother from India, actually, with quite a large family. And she was tagging along with her husband, who was also a speaker. And she gave this fabulous speech. Mm-hmm. And it was on taking the time for personal growth. So the funny thing is it was sort of a Q&A type of scenario. And one of the moms raised up and says, when do I have time for personal growth? I have a lot of kids and I'm overwhelmed. And she said, this was so funny, I almost died laughing. And the room burst out in laughter. She goes, my personal time is on the toilet.
I know, right? Yes.
She kept these little growth books and personal development books and a little journal. And she said, no, I probably don't need to be in there 15 minutes, but my kids don't bother me. So I can go in there and hide and take an extra 15 minutes, and just read a little bit. And that encouragement from reading that book just kind of gives them the mental and spiritual and emotional energy. It gives you that energy to just move on. So I try to start my day every morning with something positive, even if it's just an empowerment song or a little snippet of a podcast or a paragraph or two from a book. And that was one of the things I really liked about your book is when I open a book as a busy person that I am, even though my kids are older, I'm super busy. I have my own business. Mm-hmm. I've got hobbies and goals and change that I'm working on in my life. But when I open a book and I just see this long chapter,
right,
and with all these stories and complex language, and I think, I don't have time to read this. But what I really liked about your book is it was just so well organized into really bite-sized chunks that a mom could pick up and read on the toilet or read it early in the morning and just get a little encouragement from another mom on how to shift their mindset in such a way that it does determine the trajectory of that day.
Yes.
Have you ever been up, and I know you have, I have, and so many of the listeners have, been up all night with a crying, screaming baby who's sick, and then if you let that get to you and you're starting your day crabby, irritable, and you're snapping at the kids, just taking that 15 minutes or so in the morning and noticing that your mindset is not right, and then making that shift in your mindset is going to make all the difference in your day. Not just your day,
the
day,
everybody's day.
We create the atmosphere within our home, not just us, our kids, but our husband does as well.
Yes.
If you work outside the home too, you're going to take that stress from home into the office, or you can take that stress from the office into your home, and it needs to be separate.
Yes.
And taking a little bit of time to transition between your work life, your career life, whether you work from home or not, and your family life, and just check your mindset and encourage your mindset is so important. I think it's more challenging nowadays for moms to raise kids because of some of the social and cultural influences that we're facing. And you did talk about that in your book. And so what tips do you have for moms for managing social media? Because I think we all are now acknowledging just how damaging this can be for some kids and how challenging it can be for parents to modulate that impact in our kids' lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely, with the negativity of social media, in my household, my daughters, we have neighbors where they're the same age as my daughters. And when they play together, their parents, I have them on TikTok or Snapchat. And it's become, the older they get, and because they're seeing all their friends on that, of course, they want to socialize on there. But we've already told them. It was very interesting. We watched as a family. I believe it was on like Good Morning America a couple months ago, but there was a mother who made a deal with her children that if they did not get on social media till after they graduated high school, she would give them like the down payment to their new car. I think it was like $3,000 and her son wanted a car. But anyway, she started that when he was, I believe, in eighth grade. He graduated, he got the money, and they interviewed him as to what life was like, not being on social media. And he literally was like, he read books more, he went outside, skateboarded more. And then like he would go to school and see all this bickering going on amongst friends because they didn't like their picture and he just felt so at ease, like not being a part of that world that he thought that he wanted to be a part of. And I took that and I was like, girls, because my husband and I, like, we just want them to be different. There's nothing wrong with that. So I'm like, girls, what do you think of this idea? Of course, they're like, I really want to be on TikTok, though. I want to do those dances. But what we've done, like kind of as a agreement, a compromise, is my oldest, well, the 13-year-old, I should say, of the two, I've allowed her to be on like Pinterest. Now I know Pinterest doesn't compare to TikTok, but she's very crafty. Like both of my girls are really crafty. So she's actually feeling like she's a part of this social media world in a way because she's able to look at anime drawings, like different styles and things like that. And then we also, like, YouTube allows you to have like a kid tube. I don't know if the moms out there are aware of that, but you can have like a kids tube that show appropriate TikTok and Snapchat videos on there. So they feel a little bit a part of, like the dance crazes that are going on or the latest trends, but it's kid appropriate. So there's ways to repurpose things like, they may feel like they're missing out on something, but you can repurpose things so that everybody, you know what you're doing as a mother. You're taking away that negative influence from them that they don't see yet. But, that's where, being an adult, being a mother comes in because you're trying to do what you already know is going to be good for them. And even as a mom, like I don't want to say I deleted my Facebook. I just kind of took the app down because I was tired of getting the negative alerts. I've also intentionally repurposed my Facebook feed so that when I do go on there, it's everything I love, like gardening, organic gardening, learning about history. I love history, the past, photography. So I'm no longer like, if I do go on there, seeing all this negative news. And I mean,
and it does affect you. It does affect you. It affects our kids. And I think that most parents don't realize just how much anxiety and depression has risen. I believe I saw an intro. I wish I could remember the name of the podcast I heard this on, but they actually showed a chart, and it was a YouTube type of pod. It was a podcast and a YouTube. But anyway, they showed a chart where there was a time trajectory of when depression began to rise, because depression and anxiety sort of made a slight incline, but it remained fairly steady. And then it was the introduction of Facebook, the introduction of IG, the introduction of TikTok, and you just watch it, this clear line going up, that the more social media our kids are exposed to, the more depression and anxiety that they're facing. And it's really sad. And if you think about how hard it is for us as adults to modulate that in our own lives, it's an incredible challenge. I mean, I could easily get lost for 2 hours on TikTok and then go, what just happened?
What happened, right?
What happened? And so much of it's negative. And if we're not careful, we're going to see a dangerous mindset shift happen within our kids. They're going to start to feel like victims of a greater society. They're going to compare themselves, especially girls. I don't think young boys have as much draw to the sort of negative social media images that girls have, where everybody's photoshopped. And so this young teenage girl's constantly comparing herself with these other girls, and the way her body looks, the way her face looks, the way she's accomplishing things at school, how many friends appear in the pictures, on all sorts of social media platforms. And they feel like they're just not living these exciting lives, and they're social outcasts. And they begin, their mindset begins to shift from being a happy, confident person to feeling like I'm an outcast, I'm a loser, I'm different. All of these negative mindsets that, if we're not careful, they entrench themselves in our kids. It's going to affect their entire future. But the challenge is, as parents, is coming up with a solution for that. It's a huge challenge. Like for my daughter, I know at this point at 16, if I removed all social media from her, I would create a very negative situation in her life, because she's got very good friends.
Right.
She's got really good friends, good families. I like them all. They're not out getting into trouble and, stealing and things like that. So I want her to be able to connect with them. But at the same token, if you see your kids scrolling through TikTok for 3 hours straight, sitting on the couch, that becomes a concern, because it's not just about what they are doing. It's also about what are they not doing right now that they could be doing. Like you mentioned, your kids being involved in crafts. And I noticed we didn't allow, my daughter got her phone. She was around 10, I think, when we let her have a phone, because she was starting to do sports and I wanted to be able to contact her. Right. And I noticed prior to having that phone, she was doing a lot of crafts. She was always working on new gymnastic moves. She was coming up with things she wanted to do. And then she got that phone, and I started to see this slide away from that into just staring at a screen all day.
I know. That's what I'm going through now with my 10-year-old.
Yeah. You have to face this as parents. It's not just about the mindset that we are instilling in our children as parents. It's the mindset that these outside influences are instilling. And then sometimes our kids, because they're just kids, they don't see what we see. When we see it going in the wrong direction and we try to pull in the reins for our kids, then they're bumping up against that. They're not happy, but we're still parents. We still got to be the parent. We're not friends, know. And it's ultimately, like your daughter said, thank you, Mom. Right. Be that little tip that helped her to create more connection.
Yeah, I think they, in the moment they're upset. And then just like with everybody, you go back and think about it, eventually, like, hey, they're just looking out for me. Like, that's your hope. But in the moment, it's not
I think they don't see it until they become parents themselves, perhaps.
Yes, absolutely.
A lot of things my parents did now make sense. It didn't make sense when I was a little kid. So in your book, you gave parents some positive activities. So it's not just about saying you're not going to be on your phone. Remember telling my daughter, I don't want you on your phone all summer, because I do work full time. And she says, Mom, what am I going to do? I don't feel safe, just going out in the neighborhood, because, all you hear about on the news is sex trafficking and so forth. She's like, what am I possibly going to do all day? At that time, she wasn't old enough to get a job. So I think it's important that we come up with ideas. So we're not just taking away those things that are fostering a negative mindset, but we are adding into their lives those things that are positive. So,
absolutely. And that's the hardest thing. It's like, okay, you want to take away what they love, the TV or the phone. So like, what do you do with that? And one thing that we have done is we focused on what we see that they're good at. Or they'll come to us and be like, hey, Mom, my one daughter who's 13, she has become this awesome finger knitter that she taught through during the pandemic. But she has basically turned this into a small business. She made $300 in 2 weeks just knitting these outfits. So my oldest daughter, who's 21, she went on a trip to Florida, and she asked my daughter, she's like, hey, could you knit me an outfit, a skirt, a top? Like, she had it all down what she wanted. My daughter had never knitted anything like that, but she just saw her skill. Oh my gosh, she made this awesome outfit, and my oldest daughter put it on her Instagram, and she literally has been flooded with people wanting this crocheted outfit, knitted outfit that she's done. So things like that. I mean, I'm sure all of us as parents have seen the talents of our children, right? And so what we've done is just try to tap into that more with them. Like, okay, if you like to knit, we're going to go to Michael's, we're going to go get some yarn. This is going to be your main focus here. Or like my other daughter, she loves to bake. So I have to make sure that she can bake in the house, like at any time. But she's a really good baker. Like, she just doesn't bake muffins. Like, she'll add all these little things that she saw on her kids' YouTube channel. And she makes my life easier around the kitchen just from, everything that she's saw on those little YouTube clips. So it's like, it's a balance. And I think when we I don't want to say like go against our children, but when we include them more, like, hey, what do you like to do? Hey, you want to say your room's a mess, go clean it, get off that phone. But if you start focusing and not resisting and focusing on your children and what they actually like, it can really become a really fun activity. It can turn into something more. I like to create vision boards with my girls, because there was a time where I'm like sitting in a corner, like, get out of here, let me do my vision board, like, give mommy some time. But then they're like, hey, mom, I want to do it too.
Let's tell me what a vision board is for the listeners.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So a vision board is basically putting everything that all of your desires, I should say, anything you want, a vacations, like, use your wild imagination, just anything that you would love to manifest into your life. You can get like magazine clippings, old books, you cut them out, you put them on a poster board, and then you put that where you will see it every day. Like for me, I have it in my closet, just hanging up. So every time I'm going into my closet, I see that vision board. And what that does, it just starts a frequency and vibration effect into your brain of your desires. And from that, slowly but surely, you'll start seeing things on that vision board. And I actually have an old vision board that I did before I met my husband in 2009. And I cried. I could not believe that pretty much everything on that vision board, because I wanted a house. I was living in a tiny apartment. I had a wedding ring. I had just broken up with my daughter's father, 13 years. I had money because I was so broke, just little things like that. And I was like, literally, I'm living my vision board. So
we teach them to think positively about the future. So it really is a shift of mindset that occurs with that vision board. And yes, one of the things that I tell parents if they come in to see me is that it's really super important that your child has confidence, as I mentioned earlier, but you help to build that confidence by giving them challenges, really.
Right.
So if your kid's sitting in front of a screen all day, they're not facing challenges. And then they get to be 19 or 20 and they have no idea what they want to do with their life. They've not thought about it. They've not gone out and experienced and tasted different aspects of life. That's how they learn. Like that story about your daughter. I mean, who knows if she may end up having some sort of fashion design business that resulted from these early steps into the entrepreneurial world that she would not have had if she's sitting in front of an electronic device all day. And I think that this is
Absolutely.
what kids are really missing. And then the challenges she faces by taking these little tiny steps out of her comfort zone
Hmm.
every day.
Every day.
Now, oh gosh, now a lot of people want this outfit. Well, that could be kind of scary for a kid, but when
Oh,
she
yeah.
faces that, she makes
Yeah.
outfits, people like them or they don't like them, and she has
Right.
to adjust her strategy. She's learning about life. So you've given them that
Absolutely.
opportunity. But I love the vision board idea because it gets them thinking about what they do want. And if they can't come up with anything, they're realizing I can't come up with anything.
Right.
I'm thinking, what do I want? And that's going to shift and change. So I think, how would the world be different if every kid in America had a vision board hanging in
Oh,
the room somewhere?
it would be amazing.
And they got to watch themselves accomplish goals, because confidence is built when you face a challenge and
Hmm.
you overcome that challenge. Every time you do it, you gain in confidence. And so not allowing our kids to experience that because they're always on electronics or because we keep them from facing anything uncomfortable is
Hmm.
almost pushing them into a mindset of failure and not being enough. And
Right.
they're getting plenty of that influence in the world anyway.
Absolutely.
So it seems like many moms today are facing a lot of fears surrounding their role of as a mother. What do you think are the biggest fears that women face? Because to be confident as mothers, we can't be overwhelmed by fear. Fear is the opposite of confidence.
Right, absolutely. I mean, as a mom, every day, we're waking up to unique experiences and challenges with our children. I mean, that is a fear within ourself right there. It's just, am I teaching them correctly? I also think that women also have a fear of themselves. And what I mean by that, I know you probably know who Marianne Williamson is, but she had this very nice quote where she says, "Our deepest fear is that we are more powerful beyond our own measure." And I think that women sometimes are just afraid of being judged and being themselves and stepping outside of that comfort zone because of the attention that comes with that. So, when it comes to fear, and we like to say fear is a false evidence appearing real to ourselves. And it all lies within, like, we get afraid of, hey, if I do leave my job or if I do decide to go in this direction and leave my job, become an entrepreneur, what would that next step look like? Would I fail? What would happen to my household? And a lot of times, I think another fear that women have is not trusting their gut. I think that we all know when we need to make a change in our lives, right? But when you look at what's going on, maybe in your household, or, you're afraid to make that change because it's something that you can't readily see in front of you. So I think that women need to make sure they are trusting their gut, they're feeling their feelings, making sure that you're checking in with yourself because your feelings are your guide. They're letting you know that something has to change. So,
And that's a really important point because I think we think that as moms, we're supposed to be this perfect, shining example to our kids. And so we have to be positive and happy all the time. And we
right.
can't have a bad day. We
Mm-hmm.
can't cry about something. We can't get angry about something. But we forget that our feelings are there for a really good reason. They're indicators, just like, especially the negative emotions. They're
Mm-hmm.
indicators that something might need to change, or something from your past might need to heal. Something
Yes.
from your present might need to change. Or maybe they're just an indicator that you have a negative belief, or if you have the belief that I'm not good enough as a mother,
Exactly.
that belief in your mind is going to filter through your life as negative feelings and emotions. So those feelings and emotions are actually exposing things that need to change. So when
Mm-hmm.
our kids see us navigating the world of feeling, they learn to navigate the world of feeling.
Absolutely.
We live in this culture where we're told there's a standard. And I think that is one of the biggest mindsets people need to shift is here's a standard. And this standard I need, if I'm not at this standard, I'm a failure.
Right.
That's so not true. And so one of the things that I'm constantly telling people is that there actually is no standard.
There isn't. There
is no standard. You're on a journey, and when you can shift, and here's a key mindset shift that I know that you're aware of, is that shifting from the mindset of there being a standard that I'm never meeting to life is a journey. It's a journey of growth, just like a tiny or little toddler learning to walk. We don't criticize them every time they fall because the standard is, by the way, walking. Right. So anything less than perfect walking means you're a failure. Obviously not. We don't look at it that way. But then our kids get older and we as parents, we find ourselves a standard. We cling to it and think, this is what good parenting looks like. This is what being a good wife looks like. This is what being a successful woman in my career looks like. And anything less than that, we feel like a failure. Instead of seeing it as I am learning, growing, becoming better, stronger, wiser with each step that I take. But if you're constantly beating yourself up as a mom, you don't have the energy left over to even realize you are growing. If you think about looking back at where you were 10 years ago, and I know that when I do that, I say, wow.
Yeah.
I could look at it from, wow, I was really a screw up. Or I could look at it as, wow, I've learned so much.
Yes.
Because the problem is, if you have that mindset that I'm never measuring up to the standard, and then one day you say, okay, I've reached that standard. If you have that kind of mindset, your mind is just going to present you with another standard, or you're going to be on social media and you'll see a standard that's better than the one you just saw, or you'll be at an event and so-and-so's mom says, well, you know what I do every weekend with my kids? And you'll think, I'm not doing that. Right. And you'll never meet that standard. And so teaching our kids that life is a journey and letting them see you struggle and work through things is so important.
Yeah, we definitely set an example with how we're responding to all of our life situations.
So back to the topic of fears, what recommendations do you make in your book for moms to overcome some of these fears?
Yeah. So, again, at any moment, we all have fears. Like, we're not perfect. Everybody, has something that they're concerned with. But at any moment, you're either helping your thoughts or you're hindering your thoughts. Like when you're upset, you're closed. When you're open, you're more helping your thoughts and allowing your thoughts and giving love to your thoughts. And so what I always recommend is writing down, like, get the junk out of the brain, like write that down, whatever it is, however you're feeling, write down your fears. And then slowly just start tackling them. And as you approach your fears, when they're written down, like, you'll see, hey, this wasn't as bad as I thought. And also journaling your thoughts, meditating on, your desired outcome that you want from your life or whatever it is that you're going through. And again, just making sure that you are feeling your feelings. Like, it's so important. Like, I know I have moments where I've needed to cry, and I tell my girls, like, hey, mommy's going upstairs for an hour, and, so I can regroup and get my mental straight so I don't blow up on them or I don't go down this negative path. And even if, you have a baby and you're like, well, I can't close the door. I used to strap my kids in the car seat. And just having that freedom of allowing them maybe to drift off to sleep so I can think, or I can listen to a podcast, or, so, the thing is, what I found with motherhood is once I started resisting and just embracing my new normal, because, I think that when, before we have children, we have all this freedom, we have all the time in the world to pretty much work on our goals or do whatever it is that we have. But when you embrace your new normal and you don't look to your children as a hindrance, but more as help, or something that you can manage, I think that takes a lot of our fears away when we do those things.
Well, I like the idea of writing them down. Because journaling is great. I think sometimes we need to just get our feelings out instead of stuff them back. Because when we stuff them down, they could actually make us physically sick. The research of the Mate has really shown that. We need to accept our feelings, welcome our feelings. We can put them on paper, but also I like writing down your fears and then approaching them from the standpoint of what action can I take to deal with this? Does something in my life need to change? Does something in my mindset need to shift? What belief lies behind this fear that's limiting me?
Exactly. And then sometimes even I've written down like my fears one day and then I look the next and that fear's already been taken away. Not only from my mind did I like hide it down, but I look and I'm like, oh my goodness, that fear worked itself out. And here I had it all up here in my brain, Yeah,
that's why it's good to have it written down, because you can really look back on it and think, wow, 90% of those things I was afraid of never actually happened.
Yeah.
and we bring a level of self-acceptance. I think one of the hardest things is that and we don't realize it, where kids are bombarded with social media, but we're bombarded with media as well about, I'm supposed to be able to do it all. I'm supposed to be able to work 60 hours a week and go to every sporting event and be the perfect mom. And when there's a PTA event, I should be the one having the home baked cookies with the special frosting and decoration. And the standard just keeps getting higher and higher, and we get overwhelmed.
Yes, absolutely.
And I know for me, that overwhelm has, been something I really had to work through. And I think I'm still working through that, because at no point am I ever perfect. I remember having a house full of small children. It was pretty significant at times, just that feeling of being pulled in so many different directions.
Yes.
But, on those days when I felt like I can handle this, the day went totally different than on the days when I thought, oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't deal with this. And one of the most important mindset shifts we have to make is moving from I can't handle it to I can handle it.
Yes.
And handle it. And for years, I honestly told myself that I can't handle it. I'm not a good mother. And just realizing that, I remember actually the event, I went to a picnic, and it was a bunch of moms. And I had so many kids at that point in my life that I became somewhat isolated. So I just began to believe that I was a terrible mom, because I only saw the other people's mothering from a distance. Right. And then I went to this picnic, and the kids kind of just all, it was a beautiful summer day. They all went off to play, and all of us moms are just sitting here talking, and they're all talking about their struggles. And I was floored, because I had been isolated for a couple of years. I had so many small kids and wasn't able to get out as much. And they're all talking about their struggles. And I thought, oh my God, this is the same struggles that I have.
Yes.
I'm not a terrible mother. I'm a normal mother.
Yes.
And that I just, a sense of relief, it was like 1,000 pounds were lifted off of me, knowing that everyone's struggling and it's okay. This is the journey of life. This is how growth and learning occur. Our kids need to see a little bit of struggle in our life. But I think even more so than then, because I'm 53 years old, my kids are mostly older. I've only got 1-2 years away from being an adult. Back then when I had small kids, there's even more challenges now.
Yes.
To face. And more moms are isolated. That's number one complaint that I hear from women is I feel so isolated. And do you have any tips for helping moms connect with other moms?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the easiest things that I've found is, joining groups on social media. That seems to be where everyone is anyway. So it's like, if you literally go on Facebook, you can find pretty much any type of mom group you're looking for, or, if you have tweens and you want to connect with other tweens, or little babies, just pretty much any type, just find a group of like-minded people, for whatever interests that you have. Also, I mean, there's been times that I've like just gone to the playground or joined Girl Scouts. I would have to say Girl Scouts, not saying that that's what a mom has to do. It could be any group. But if you find a group of women, like you said, you're like, oh my gosh, they're just like me. I mean, no woman hasn't gone through probably something that you've gone through before. So just joining any type of group with women, you're pretty much, going to find other like-minded people like yourself that you can socialize with. Like some of my best friends to this day came from my 21-year-old Girl Scout troop. So it's like been, geez, how many years now? Like 16, 17, and we go there with this intention of wanting our children to be in Girl Scouts, but then it turns into us, taking them to plays together and going out to eat. So, definitely if you're trying to put yourself out there, just take that forward step. Go to a library meetup or something with your children, a story time. But people are out there for you.
That's important because I hear a lot of people, I can't connect, but they're not going out. And I think it's important that you mention the social media, because social media is not all bad.
Right.
Not all bad. I run a couple groups on social media, and it's really an important way to connect. And when you're really having a struggle and everybody else is busy, you can get on there and say, I just don't know what to do with my 12-year-old. Right. And other moms can go, oh, I had the same problem, and here's what I tried. And you go, oh, wow, what a great idea. I'm going to try that. And sometimes we can even connect on social media with local groups. There are a lot of local groups on Facebook in the group section of, moms of Northeast Ohio, or, toddler parents from Northeast Michigan. I mean, there's just a lot of that on social media, and we often don't even realize it's there.
Yes.
If you are that lonely and you feel that disconnected, the one thing you'd be sure of, there's a lot of other moms that feel that way too.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Absolutely.
So one of the biggest challenges, I think, for stay-at-home moms is sometimes they feel like, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. And this is one thing that really bothers me. I think it's great that women now have the ability, they have the right to go out and do whatever they want in life. But a lot of moms just choose to stay home. And that should not be an invalidated choice either. But I think they feel sometimes that their creativity is really stifled. So this was an important issue that you addressed in your book, was helping women to tap into the creative gifts they have inside them. What encouragement would you give for women along those lines?
Yeah. So I know when I was going through that, especially when my children were really young, you have to, continue to have imagination. Again, we talked about the vision boards, taking small actionable steps. But also, I started with saying to myself, like, what is something I could do every day and not get paid for it? Like, I didn't care how crazy of an idea I thought it was. And I have a really cool story with that happened is, like I said, I have 5 kids. My oldest 3 at the time, we knew we're going to have to go to summer camp. And I was a stay-at-home mom. I left my job, and my husband and I were like kind of low on funds, and we're like, oh my gosh, what are they going to do this summer? Because, even though, yes, they could have stayed at home with me, we're just the type of parents, like, they need to get out of this house, experience the world a little bit. We need to put them in a camp. So, because I knew that I had to watch my own children at the time, like I told you about the Girl Scout troop, those moms all needed their kids watched this summer. And I was like, you know what? I just like being crafty. Why not? Let me ask these moms if any of their kids need any type of care this summer while they're at work. And from that, so all 12 of the troop, all the ladies were like, yes, oh my gosh, thank you. Let us know how much. And then my husband's like, our place isn't that big right now. Like, where are you going to put these kids? And I'm like, I don't know. We had just joined a church. And so he's like, why don't you go ask? And I was so scared. I was like, okay. So I went to the church. I was like, do you think I could use your downstairs space to watch a couple kids? Because they had a huge, huge playground outside. Not only did they say yes, but they were like, actually, we were looking for a summer program. So go for it. And I had never done this before. I made brochures, T-shirts, and I started this in April, this thought. And then come the end of May, I had 160 kids enrolled.
Oh, wow. So
yeah.
you were able to express these creative gifts you have in the context of still being at home. I mean,
right.
Doesn't mean you have to be home 24/7. You were able to start the summer program, but I think that's so cool. So if we make that decision to stay home, we don't have to let our gifts and our dreams die.
No, not at all.
Because if it's your goal, something you put on your vision board, I want to be a stay-at-home mom, doesn't mean that that's the only thing on that vision board.
Right.
You can think about the areas that you're creative in and how can I express this creativity in the context of this important role that I'm in right now?
Yes.
And that's where the mindset is important, isn't it? Because if you have that victim mindset, well, right now I have to stay at home.
Yes.
I can't use my degree. I can't use my creativity, but you stayed at home and you wrote a book. You ran this program, and I'm sure you've done many other things to express your creativity, and your kids are watching all that, and it encourages them to explore different interests. And I'm sure not everything you have done, just like not everything I've done, we've always succeeded at. Sometimes we explore an avenue and it doesn't work out. Our kids see that. They see us say, well, that didn't work out. And we can either set it aside or develop a new strategy.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's nice to, for them to see when something doesn't work out, how you maneuvered through that. That's what they're paying attention to, and they'll take that with them.
Exactly. So in closing, what message would you like to leave women with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would just like moms to know that your inner being and your inner spirit and well-being are the most important thing that you can do for yourself. Don't forget who you are, what you want to accomplish while you're here on this planet. Open yourself up to possibilities and always challenge yourself to do something new and exciting, because there's a lot of opportunities that aren't on your radar yet. They may not be in front of you, but you just have to trust your intuition, keep going forward, embrace your inner child, so to speak, with your gifts that you have, because we all have gifts inside us that want to be expressed. Like what you want really wants you, and you have to open yourself up to that.
So if women want to learn more about your book and about you, where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, so I am on Mindset Makeover Mamas on Instagram, also on Facebook. My book is also available on Amazon via Audible, Kindle, and paperback. And also, I just wanted to tell you, for your listeners, I just have a special gift. So the first 15 people that sign up for my newsletter, which is at motherhoodwithme.com, get a free copy of my Audible.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'll have all of that information, how you could get in contact with Sophia Brown below in the show notes. So reach out. I really liked her book. It had just some great, easily digestible tips for moms just to navigate life with kids, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or whether you're working. We're all busy. And I just liked those bite-sized chunks, really good information to encourage you to put your mindset first, because when you put your mindset first, your entire day and your relationship with your kids, your spouse, if you have one, goes completely differently. Thank you so much, Sophia. It was an absolute pleasure. I enjoyed talking with you today.
Thank you so much, Tiffani.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of A Transformed Life podcast. I hope you found it informative, thought-provoking, and entertaining. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to the podcast so you never miss out on future episodes. I cover a variety of topics to help you transform your mind, health, and relationships. If you found this episode helpful or entertaining, please take a moment to leave me a rating and review on your preferred podcast platform. Your support means the world to me, and it helps me to reach more listeners who could benefit from this content. Lastly, I love hearing from my listeners, so please reach out to me on Instagram, Twitter, and even TikTok with your thoughts, feedback, or ideas for future episodes. Your input helps me to make better content and build a community around this podcast. So thank you again for tuning in, and I can't wait to share the next episode with you.